Hi folks, Greg Wright here with Build Your Own Home Right. Today we're going to do video number 3 in our series on how to build your own home. And today is one of my favorite portions. This is about how to find that perfect piece of land for your build. So some of you may just be looking at a residential lot in a subdivision where all your utilities, your lot corners, all those things are already there. They're marked, which is normal if you're just building in a subdivision. But if you're out looking for a rural piece of land, then things are totally different on what you need to be looking for. So one of the first things and the easiest way is to just have a realtor help you find a piece of ground. But if you can't find what you're looking for, then I've got some ideas and some ways that I've done personally to help you find that perfect piece of land. So what I've done in the past is that if I'm driving around and I see an area that I like and there's parcels in there that I like that are vacant, then I'll go to a local title company. Now I know some of the areas of the country don't use title companies per se. I believe attorneys handle things like that back east, so to speak. But in California and Idaho, where I'm at, we have title companies that handle your escrow and your title needs. So you can go into the title company and they have what they call a farm package. So if you have an address of a neighboring parcel, house that's already built that has an address, you can take that address into the title company and they will put together a package for you that will include a survey map of the area with all the different parcels on it, and you can give them a radius of how far you want to go out. And then on those maps and accompanying documents, there'll also be the tax rolls that'll give you the owners of those properties with their addresses. And once in a while, if you're lucky, there'll even be a phone number in there. And then what I've done in the past is I've called if I had the phone number. If not, I've written letters to these folks that have these vacant parcels of land. And I was able to buy the first 5 pieces of property I ever bought in my life. I bought them all by going and finding them myself. And I got some really good parcels. And sometimes it takes a little bit of work. I had one parcel that I had built a house on 10 acres. And my view out the back was down in a little valley with another 10-acre parcel down there, and it was the last one left in the whole area that was vacant. And I knew who the owner was. He was one of my neighbors. The gentleman owned 2 pieces of property, a vacant one and the one his house was on. I called him twice a year for 6 years, and he didn't want to sell. He was saving it for retirement. And I'd sold that house and was getting ready to go buy another piece of property. And at the end of the day, I go, I think I'm gonna try one more time. And I just talked to him 2-3 months ago. And I called him and he says, hey, I'm glad you called me back. I'm ready to sell. And I was a real estate broker at the time, and I always carried my contracts with me. So I went to his house and within 20 minutes, I had a deal on that piece of property and I finally got it. So sometimes it takes a little bit of work. So anyway, that's a great way to go find a piece of property if there's none on the market that fits your needs. So once you buy a rural piece of property, there's things you need to protect yourself with that you don't have to worry about if you're buying a subdivision. If you buy a subdivision, you get your sewer, your water, your utilities. They're generally there. Once in a while, if it's more of a rural subdivision, there may be the fact that there's no sewer there and you may have to do a septic system or something. But let's just talk about a parcel that has maybe only one of those things. So generally, there's going to be power going through a subdivision, either it's overhead or underground. But I've had instances where the nearest power was, 200-300 feet away. And that gets expensive. You got to bring the power in. And if it's a bigger parcel like ours, we're 10-acre parcels, I not only have to bring the power to the property, but I have to bring that power all the way into my building site. So just be aware that you can talk to generally the utilities, the power company, and find out where the nearest access point is to that power. And if it goes right across the front of your property, then it's just a matter of the expense of getting it into the house, whether that's underground or overhead. But before I ever close on a piece of rural property, I make sure that the septic system will work. And there's a test for that that's called a Perkin-Mantle test. and it's fairly inexpensive. The backhoe comes out, digs 1, 2, 3 holes around the property, and you bring a soils engineer out. He fills those holes with water, and then he takes readings on those to get what the percolation rate is, and that's the amount of absorption that the ground has for standing water in these holes. And they take that measurements down every 30 minutes, and then they end up with, through their formula, they end up with a percolation rate, and that tells you how many linear feet of leach field you need per bedroom in your house. Leach fields are designed off bedrooms, not bathrooms. You could have a 3-bedroom house with 5 bathrooms, it doesn't matter. They're worried about occupancy, which is in the bedrooms. So that's one test that I will never close a piece of property without doing, because you don't know if the septic system is going to be an engineered system or a standard system, and the engineered systems can get very expensive. The other thing I will never do is I never close a piece of property until I have the corners marked. Because on the smaller parcels, it's way more important because you've got setbacks that you have to deal with when you're building your home or any outbuildings that go on there. But if it's a larger parcel, like 10 acres or so, it's not that big a deal. And in both my cases, the properties were fenced, and I was able to go to the corners and dig around a little bit, and I was able to find the actual rebar corners or stakes that were there when they originally divided the property. But if you can't find them, you need to have those surveyed so that you know where your corners are. And lastly, and probably the most important, is water. So in the areas where I was at in California, we were up in the foothills, and there was no water table. So there's a lot of granite up in there, and then to find water on a vacant piece of land, and some people don't believe you can do this, but I've done it myself, and it works. You bring the well companies out, and they'll douse or witch or whatever you want to call it with some brazing rod, and you can literally find where the water's flowing, and it could be hundreds of feet deep, but it makes some kind of electrical force that picks up in those brazing rods through friction or whatever it is. I really don't understand it, but it does work. And you can find where the water source is. And so wells were fairly cheap in California, but you still, before you close, you need to drill that well and make sure you have potable water. You're way better off being out of, back then it was maybe $5,000 or $6,000 to drill that well than buying a piece of vacant land, which back when I did my last one was $250,000 for a 10-acre piece. So if I'd have spent $250,000 and had no water on it, now it's worth very little. So it's just good insurance to make sure you got water on it. You don't have to put the pump in, you don't have to do all of that. Because when they drill those wells, they can tell what the gallons per minute is. They can pull up water, clean water from there. They can go get a potability test, and you can make sure that you have good, clean, potable water on your property. In Idaho, or if you're near in a flat portion where we are in the Treasure Valley near Boise, the Snake River runs through there, and the water table isn't very deep. And a lot of people here buy land without drilling the well first, because the wells are way more expensive here than they were in California. You can get into $30,000 for a well in Idaho. So I'm still very leery of that. I have not bought any rural properties here. I've built houses for people that have bought property, and I built a house for them. So I'm familiar with all that, but I personally have not bought any property here in Idaho that required a well. But I would drill the well anyway, because land's expensive here too now. So those are things you need to be aware of before you even close on that property. And the other thing with the wells and the septic is when you're on rural property is that the setback for septic is generally at least 15, 25 feet. It varies depending where you're at, but it's from your property line. Let's say you only have a 1-acre parcel and you want to put your house on that, and you got to put the septic system on that, and if it needs a well, which is not uncommon to be that small and need septic and well, you've got to be X amount of feet away from the property line with that septic system. And generally speaking, your well needs to be 100 feet from the septic system. And all septic systems require 100% expansion area. So whatever your septic system comes out, what the design is, let's say it's a 3-bedroom house, you're gonna need 2 leach fields 75 feet long. Or maybe you do 3 leach fields that are 30 feet long, or whatever it requires. You need to have enough land to double that. You may never use it, but they all require that expansion area. So you gotta make sure that all those things fit, and also based on where you put your house on that lot. So other than that, if the lay of the land is what you like, if it's a view lot, those lots are generally gonna be a little steeper. And then the flat lots doesn't really give you any problem because you can build anything on a flat lot. So anyway, I hope that helps you. And if it does, don't forget to hit the subscribe button or the like button or any of the buttons for that matter. I'd appreciate any of that. And we'll look forward to you on our next video, which is going to be about starting with the design of your plants. So we look forward to seeing you then. See you later.